Hi, welcome to the 7-part series, How to Write a Romance Novel. This is part 6, Rewriting, and that means we're almost done. Okay, you finally finished your draft. It has been a painful process if you're anything like me. So it's done. You're like, yay, the thing I've been aiming for. And now it's time to get ruthless because now you have to go back and see the things that don't work, get rid of them, and get better things there instead. But you just have to remind yourself this is all part of the process. Now, this doesn't matter if you are somebody like Sabrina Jeffries, who I talked about before, who will rewrite along the way. She'll write, rewrite, rewrite all the way through. So the end of her first draft is actually in very good shape. If you're someone like me, excuse me, I like to get all the way to the end and then go back to the beginning and start rewriting. There isn't a method that's better than the other. You still have to rewrite no matter what you do. And as you go through, and hopefully you've maybe had a little bit of time that you can set it aside, so you're coming to it with fresh eyes. When you're looking at it, you want to see, does your story work? Not just does it work in your head, but do the words on the page work? Does it flow like a story? Or are there weak points? Or are there points that are like, you kind of veer off into sort of like, a detour because you were a little bit unclear about the plot? Because readers will pick up on that. And guess what? When they leave you a review, you will hear about it. So you want to kind of fix everything you can possibly fix. How's your ending? Because again, when you've been toiling away at this thing for, however long, endings can get rushed. And that's particularly bad because one of the things that readers look for the most is the ending. It's your last impression with them. I mean, there's the first impression, but there's the last impression. So if they walk away going, wow, that was a great book, I want to get the next one in the series, that's a good thing. But if it's like, wow, that just sort of abruptly ended, they might not come back for the next book to see if you work that out or not. So these are things to look through on your own to see if this is the book you wanted to write. And then it's time to hand it off to other people to read and to critique. The editing process. As with most things, it starts with you. The first thing you want to do after you've gone through the story and it's in great shape is you want to make sure that the grammatical errors and spelling errors are at a real minimum before you give it to anybody else. I say at a minimum. I mean, ideally, there won't be any, but it is very difficult, especially when you're talking about a full-length manuscript. It is very difficult for one person to catch their own errors. And spell check and grammar check is great, and it will pick up much of much of what's wrong, but it won't pick up everything, because if you misspell a word and then inadvertently spell a word correctly, that's not gonna come up as an error. It's just because you spelled that other word correctly. So you got to be careful about that. A lot of people are dyslexic or just have difficulties with spelling and grammar. If that is your case, it's unfortunately, it's going to be a little harder for you, but you may want to give it to somebody. If you give it to a professional proofreader, it could cost you hundreds of dollars. So I would maybe start with a friend of yours who is really great at that stuff. I would still slip them a little bit of thank you money, or, whatever, barter some service or something, because it's a big ask. It really is a big ask. So just keep that in mind. It could be a retired high school English teacher, somebody who knows their stuff, whoever it is, if you really think you can't catch a lot of it. So let's say you've done that and the script is in great shape for that. You want to hand it off to somebody now who can tell you their honest opinion, who also is going to not be mean. And also will really be honest. This is probably not something like a loved one, like a parent, a loving parent. A mean parent would probably be really good at this, but a loving parent might not be your best editor, because you'll be like, oh, this is great, honey. But that's probably not what you need, because again, you need someone who's going to be honest so that you can fix anything that needs to be addressed. And it's a big ask, because in order to really read something, a full-length manuscript, and do notes on it, it takes a lot of time. So this is something where you want to choose somebody whose taste you trust, and also that you're willing to do this for them at some point or something comparable, because again, it's a lot of work. As you do this, you also want to be your least sensitive. You want the people that you're giving this to know it's safe for them to say, hey, I think this could have been clarified better, or I didn't understand this, or whatever. Do not get defensive. This is going to be great practice. Do not get defensive. Like, when eventually you're going to get reviews, and if in part 1 I asked you to go out and read reviews, if you did that, you will see that every book, even books you love, have bad reviews. You are going to get a bad review, and you are probably going to get like one that's really mean at some point, at least one. I mean, I've got plenty. And you have to practice A, not taking it personally, and B, not responding. It's just, you got to be like, oh, okay, just sort of, even inwardly, if you're like, oh, you're so wrong about that, that can't be coming out of your mouth at the same time. And especially can't be like, being typed out somewhere furiously. So it can hurt because you worked on this manuscript so hard, and it's your baby, and you're like, you love it, and then hear somebody say, oh yeah, this is not great, or whatever, is difficult. So that is why it's really important to choose people whose taste you trust. I think I also mentioned at one point that I have, after decades of writing, I have 5 people whose taste I trust 100%. Like, they'll say something, and even if I'm like, oh, if one of the people who's not on that list, if they came up and said one thing, I'd be like, oh, I don't think so. If this person says it, who's on the list, yes, I believe it, because I really, really trust their taste. If you can find people like that, you really want to do whatever you can to keep them in your circle, to keep them helping you out, to keep them honest with you and giving you their opinion, because your books will improve immeasurably. These are really good things. Now, a lot of times, like, if you give this to like 3 or 4 people, and if most of the people you give it to, they might say, you know what, I don't like this thing that happens in chapter 3. If all 3 of them are saying that, there is something wrong with something that happens in chapter 3. They might not have the right solution to fix it. But again, if you got like a few people saying, this doesn't sit well with me, take another look at it and fix it. But in the course of getting notes, people might say this, that, this, what. You don't have to take everything they say, but you have to listen politely and see what you can use from that. And through this process, you'll also learn whether or not this is a good person to ask to help you the next time or the time after that. Because again, you are trying to accumulate this circle of friends, of editors who will really help you out on your writing journey. Because the time to fix things is before the book gets published, as opposed to after you get like your 300th review of someone saying, oh, in chapter 3, this thing happened and I hated it. Yeah, you don't want that. I just wanted to leave you with 2 of my meanest reviews. And I really have fairly thick skin because I've been a writer for a very long time. I've been a writer in Hollywood for a couple of decades. And for the most part, people do like my writing. But, not everyone does, and not everyone's very nice about it. So I'm pretty used to the criticism. But this first one really got to me. It was for my first book, my first Regency, Never a Mistress, No Longer a Maid. And the trope is the secret child. So the character in question is Violet, and she's 7 years old. And this review on Goodreads was like one sentence, and it was, the kid is a brat. I was like, oh, not Violet. Because I really felt at this point, because I love Violet, and I really worked on that book, and it was like, Violet really was my child. And I was like, what? It was it wasn't even that mean of a thing to say, but I was just like, Violet is a brat. I was not expecting that. So that hurt. And then the other one, which I just think is funny, and not only do I think it's so funny just in general, I have used it in promotional materials. I think it's such a great 1-star review. So I don't know which of my books this review is about, but it was from a reader, and they were complaining about the sex in the book. Like, this book is filthy. It's got sex scenes, nothing but sex scenes. These are long sex scenes everywhere. The sex scenes are just beginning to end. It just could not go on and on and on and on about sex scenes, right? And then this person says, and all her books are like that. Oh, okay, Miss giving me a 1-star review. How would you know that if you didn't go on to read the other books? All of which, yes, they are all filled with sex, because I like sex in books. But maybe this person likes sex in books too. So yeah. Thank you for joining me for part 6 of How to Write a Romance Novel in 7 Steps. And part 7 is all about marketing, which is not writing, but it's really important. I don't know if it's as important as writing, but it's important. Yes. And it's next. Hope to see you then.